What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to episode 11 of the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast here on the Smark Out Moment channel, where we go back to the year 2002, check out all of the episodes of SmackDown where Paul Heyman was the lead writer, and giving our thoughts, reviews, at a different time in pro wrestling. And joining me back on this journey back in time, as per usual, me, Callum Wiggins, is Robert DeFelice.
I'm a little hurt that you didn't introduce me as your podcast partner for life, but I'll get over it. How you doing, Callum?
Wait until next episode. Maybe I'll pop the question in this one, whereas just like Chuck ends up doing. But we'll get around to that. Get around to that point. I'm not very committal, as you know, Rob.
Oh God, I thought we had something special.
We need a Rico involved in this. Get Tony involved in one of his pink shirts or whatever, and maybe he can officiate the ceremony.
Oh, there it is. Coming soon to the Smark Out Moment Patreon.
Don't promise stuff we can't deliver. But hopefully you guys, if you, that's one of the jankiest intros we've had on this podcast so far. But
You're welcome.
Hopefully you guys are enjoying the series so far, though. If you are, then leave a like on the video, drop a comment below to let us know what you think about this series or this episode in particular, your thoughts on this edition of SmackDown. If you are starting your journey here for some reason and you want to go back to the very beginning and check out all of the podcasts in order, then there's a playlist on the Smark Out Moment channel on YouTube for that. And then, of course, you can also click the link in the description if you haven't watched this episode of SmackDown already, and check it out, follow it along if you like what we say about it and you want to check it out for yourself. But first of all, before we get into the actual review of the show, let's talk about some news and events. So a reasonably interesting story is the fact that there is a house show match in Sioux Falls on September the 6th, which is Brock Lesnar facing Triple H, with obviously Brock Lesnar being the WWE champion or undisputed champion, and Triple H being the World Heavyweight champion.
Yes, they did a few of these. I know that they would do it again when Hunter has Flair by his side, because they had done it would be Brock with Stephanie and Triple H with Flair. But I always liked this idea, and I'm sure that the 2002 variant of this match would have been way better than the 2012 variant of that match.
It probably would be a bit more concise at the very least. But there was also the first Angle and Lesnar match took place on a house show on September 9th. So the people that were there get to see the first ever iteration of that match come together. So hopefully those people enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Get to witness a piece of history.
And, I'm sure it was not as good as we would see, but also in some ways probably better because, those house show matches, they always have a little bit more fun. So maybe Brock and Angle went balls to the wall and that local crowd was the only crowd to see it.
We also saw the release of Bobby the Brain Heenan's biography or autobiography. I can't remember which one it was because I know he got support writing it, but I think it technically counts as an autobiography. It's Bobby the Brain, Wrestling's Bad Boy Tells All, where it's just a load of Bobby's more funny, light-hearted stories from the wrestling business. The only people that the real meat of it is in talking about WCW, and was not very positive about his whole experience there. Calls it the worst 6 years of his life.
That's a shame.
Yeah, but it's pretty obvious when you see his attitude towards pretty much the whole experience there. He basically said the only people that he really praises from his run in WCW was Hulk Hogan, who also wrote the foreword for the book. So
long-time friend.
Ric Flair, another long-time
friend. Yeah.
And Mike Tenay.
Yeah, he was not a fan of Shivani.
No, he hated Shivani and talks about he basically lays that out clear as anyone to see in this book as well. I mean, people that really get heavily attacked on this one are people like Shivani and Bischoff and Ultimate Warrior. Just
I never actually read that book, but I always felt bad that Heenan and Shivani didn't get along.
Yeah, he doesn't pull any punches though, and I kind of respect that in somebody willing to talk about that stuff. It's kind of like the difference when these books are released just independently, as opposed to, when we spoke about when we did the 2001 Wrestling Odyssey, when they did Angle and Chyna's autobiographies, and they were they were released as part of the WWE banner, so they were a lot tamer than they could have been.
And Bobby Heenan, sad the way things ended up for him, but greatest of all time as far as I'm concerned, manager-wise.
Absolutely one of the greatest managers of all time. So now let's talk a little bit about the ratings war between Raw and SmackDown. So for this edition, which will be the September 5th edition of SmackDown, it is a 4.0 for SmackDown, so up a point from the previous week, whereas Raw is down to a 3.6 for the September 2nd edition. So SmackDown comfortably wins this week.
Yeah, the better brand. I think we can all agree.
Absolutely. Well, what was Raw up to? Well, the big story was Triple H was awarded the World Heavyweight Championship by Eric Bischoff. So the big gold belt is back in WWE after being retired at WrestleMania, or essentially the week after WrestleMania with the delivery of the new Undisputed Championship belt.
Hindsight 2020, I'm sure you think the WWE Championship is better, but were you always a WWE Championship over World Championship guy, or how did you feel about the two belts?
As I've spoken about in the past, I was pretty much exclusively watching SmackDown for the most part. But I have to say that out of the two of them, and I love this iteration of WWE Championship, but especially when the spinner belt came into and became the vogue, the World Heavyweight Championship is just an awesome looking belt. It's just an awesome looking belt.
Yeah, I do feel bad. Once you get the spinner belt in, it almost becomes a no contest. But for me, I don't know, that big gold belt, it screams prestige. But that's not a knock on the Undisputed Championship at all.
No, it just looks. I mean, obviously it's just big and gold, and that's kind of all you really want with a title. But it looks so imperious. Like the guy who's wearing it, you just feel okay. You're the biggest star in the company. You have a belt that big.
Yeah.
So Triple H becomes the first World Heavyweight Champion after he won the number one contenders match against The Undertaker last week. Bischoff decides to just reward him with the belt. He defends it for the first time on this show as well against Ric Flair.
Yeah, and not as good as their May 2003 match, but this is a fun one. And it's who else do you defend the big gold belt against?
Yep, so he also pulls double duty on this show as well because he then has a main event match where he teams up with Chris Jericho against Ric Flair and RVD. And I believe that Ric Flair and RVD win that match as well, and we start the trajectory towards Triple H defending the World Heavyweight Championship against Rob Van Dam at Unforgiven.
Yes, and that starts a journey for Ric Flair that we still talk about to this day.
We have Bubba Ray Dudley and Trish Stratus defeating Christopher Nowinski and Molly Holly in an intergender tables match.
That's an awful match.
Yeah, it's not very good, and it ends with Bubba Ray powerbombing Molly Holly through a table.
Yeah. Nowinski and Holly, fun pairing, but I think Christopher Nowinski can safely say his contributions to the wrestling industry mostly outside of it.
Yeah, he's done a lot more for the business in his time since retiring from in-ring work compared to what he actually achieved as part of the wrestling business. So we also announced that Crash Holly announced that he was jumping ship from Raw to SmackDown. It was actually an interesting storyline arc, was the fact that Bischoff got wind that somebody from SmackDown someone from Raw who had family on SmackDown was jumping ship. So he assumes that it was Jeff Hardy jumping to join Matt Hardy on SmackDown. And so he had 3-minute warning beat up Jeff Hardy as basically a last goodbye, fuck you, we're going to send you to SmackDown on a stretcher. And then Crash Holly basically just snuck up behind him and revealed that he was the one who was moving to join his cousin Bob Holly on SmackDown instead.
The Hollies might be one of my favorite fake wrestling families.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. Like, they're very love-hate family.
Poor Elroy.
And there was also the very first lingerie pillow fight between Stacy Keibler and Terry Runnels.
I don't know what to say about that.
There's really not much to say other than the fact that the King was the special guest referee and basically spent most of the match on the bed, laying down, waiting for one of the women to do something to him, which never happened. Stacy ended up winning and tarred and feathered Terry.
That's
with one of the pillows.
That's a rough one. I don't know if you'd see that today.
Well, you definitely wouldn't see a lingerie pillow
Well,
fight
I
in.
mean, yeah, but you also wouldn't see a tar and feather. You wouldn't see any of that tonight. You
I
wouldn't
think you're
see
more
Jerry
likely to see that.
Lawler.
I think you're more likely to see that than the actual lingerie side of it.
You wouldn't see Jerry Lawler waiting on a bed. Just none of it.
No. So that's basically what Raw is all about. So let's move on to the better show, the SmackDown show, which takes place from obviously September 5th, 2002, from the Rec Center in Green Bay, Wisconsin, home of
I
Mr.
love
Kennedy
Green
when he
Bay,
eventually gets there.
but I thought it was Milwaukee.
Definitely says Green Bay to me. That's where I got the notes for, but it might be Milwaukee, and I got that slightly.
I was doing an R-Truth bit. Horrible. Just
Oh, okay. See, you need to preempt me with that sort of stuff if you're going to do that. It just makes us look like amateurs, Rob. It makes us look like
I should have done a better job with the setup. No, it was Green Bay.
You're going to make this college podcast look bad. Just like okay, so Rec Center from Green Bay, Wisconsin. Show kicks off with a recap of the WWE Championship Tournament, which Undertaker won last week, if you remember. And the announcement that Brock Lesnar and Undertaker will go face tonight with Stephanie McMahon moderating.
What a great segment that is.
Yeah, we will get to that. But first of all, we're kicking off with some straight ahead with some action, which is Rey Mysterio against Billy, of Billy and Chuck.
Did we kick it off straight ahead with the match? I mean,
oh yeah, obviously, yeah, just straight into a match. Yeah.
Yeah.
This isn't as good as the Rico and Rey Mysterio match, which is quite surprising considering how much more experience on the main roster Billy has over Rico.
As Shawn Michaels said in their Hall of Fame speech, we can always count on Billy Gunn to overpromise and underdeliver.
There was some loud Rico sucks chants during this match. So Rico is like the over part of their act. At this point, Billy and Chuck are, as we will discuss, we're going to get a little bit more pep into their union, as it were, going forward as part of this segment. But right now, they're just underlings to Rico, who's the real character in this act right now.
Yeah, Rico wouldn't be the focus by the end of the show.
Mysterio goes for a 619. Rico grabs the referee, allowing Chuck to grab him while he performs the move. Mysterio blocks a back body drop into a body scissors, and then he rolls up Billy and gets the pin. So he defeats a veteran and a much bigger guy at that. So basically just the typical Rey Mysterio underdog overcoming the odds and the man advantage and pull out a quick victory. Post-match, that match is okay, but it's all about the post-match, this segment anyway.
Rey gets another win. Rey is not undefeated because he lost SummerSlam, but no shame in losing Kurt Angle, and then you get to this beautiful post-match segment.
So post-match, Billy is frustrated and shocked. Rico tries to calm him down. Rico grabs the mic and says to Chuck that now's the time to do this because obviously they've started treading water. They're no longer the tag team champions. The tag belts aren't even on SmackDown anymore. So they're starting to lose a bit of sense of purpose and they've got no momentum right now. So Rico says Chuck has something to ask Billy and asks him to dig deep in his tights and pull out the love. I can't help it because that's their view. You know what they're saying backstage. You know those guys. They're like they do these things. You know they're always just wanting to grab an upper man's dick when they get to see it.
Yeah. Commentary for this segment was fun. Yeah, I go on.
That's one word for it. So Chuck pulls out a ring, gets on one knee. Chuck says he wants to be Billy's partner for life. Billy says yes. Chuck struggles to put the ring on the finger because Billy's got pretty big hands.
Yeah.
And they have one big group hug to end the segment. So it's basically now we're going to see a commitment ceremony next week between Billy and Chuck. So
my favorite is Taz is like, oh, this is great. They're going to be tag team partners for life. And Cole's like, no, they're engaged. Yeah, they're the tag team partners. No, they're engaged. And then Taz just starts laughing because, whoa, I'm a Brooklyn guy. We don't do that stuff, you know.
Yeah, I found it quite weird that after the break, they come back from commercial and there's this weird music video style recap of it immediately.
That had to be a network update thing where I think something else was on the actual show because that looked superimposed and just did not fit into the rest of the show.
So now we have some championship action after that melodrama ends, and it's going to be Jamie Noble defending the Cruiserweight Championship against Shannon Moore, who's had Noble's number, as it were, for the last couple of weeks. And this match is decent, but it has zero crowd reaction, which hurt it.
They were not feeling Shannon. I think Shannon just needed a boost, Yeah,
they built Shannon up well, but he's still like a new guy. They hasn't really done too much to establish his character. So if you hadn't watched WCW or his work in 3 Count, you basically didn't know who this guy was, except the fact that he just flew around the ring and had a few cool moves, but he doesn't have a character at this point.
What would you do for him? Would you give him a mentor?
I guess that would work in some regard. Maybe they go along those lines. What about a gimmick where he's got a giant mohawk and he just gives tattoos to people?
I definitely don't think he needs to walk around with something called a book of dilly gaff. I don't think that works.
You don't want him teaming up with a Navy SEAL for no reason?
No, no. No, and I think the worst name for that would be Ink Ink.
If you don't know what we're talking about, then don't watch TNA.
If you don't know what we're talking about, good.
Yeah, you probably had a better experience watching wrestling than some other people did. But there's like these huge we want puppies chants and stuff like that because nobody cares about this match, even though they're doing some cool stuff, like Moore hits a tope con hilo at one point to Noble on the floor. There's a corkscrew dive at one point by Moore, gets a long 2 count. Eventually, Noble does get the advantage. He blocks the diving Hurricane Rana attempt with a powerbomb in midair. He hits a Tiger Bomb to Moore and retains the championship. So, right result, Noble definitely shouldn't be losing the title at this point. And it just, Moore was not ready to be Cruiserweight champion.
Yeah, and maybe better things for Shannon Moore would come, but this wasn't it. He wasn't going to be the plucky babyface.
So Paul Heyman is psyching Brock Lesnar up backstage for his match with Randy Orton, telling him not to take him lightly because they both come out from the same system and they train together. Orton arrives, says that he's respected Brock Lesnar, but he doesn't sweat him. And so we're going to see Brock Lesnar versus Randy Orton in 2002.
Much like a lot of the OVW stuff we've talked about so far, like when Batista has been in the ring with Cena and stuff like that. But yeah, Brock Lesnar and Randy Orton in 2002 is a lot different than what it would be.
Yeah, and their eventual match at SummerSlam, was it
2016?
2016, yeah. And but yeah, so it's it'll be interesting to see it. They're both at very different trajectories right now, and that'll probably play into the actual result. But we'll get into that soon, because there is an announcement that the main event of this show, I believe it was the main event. I might be actually wrong on that front. Yeah, it was the main event of the show.
No,
is Undertaker versus, or the announcement that Undertaker, Edge, and Rikishi would take on Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, and Eddie Guerrero.
That is what a lineup of talent.
Yeah, absolutely great. Another great star-studded 6-man tag team match. Edge
and Rikishi is working.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's doing a lot of stuff right now. Actually, he's involved in the next segment where Edge walks up to Rikishi backstage, and the back of Rikishi's shirt displays a picture of his ass, because that's his gimmick. He is a walking ass at this point.
Gotta back that ass up.
Edge says that Green Bay is the home of the Cheeseheads and the Edgeheads.
Awful.
See, this is an interesting segment because they try, and because essentially Rikishi's gimmick right now, as we talk about, is a walking ass who performs a stink face and dances around for people, and they try and take it in a really serious direction, where Edge asks Rikishi if he's going to give someone the stink face, and Rikishi talks about tells this I guess heartfelt story about the fact that he's been given, it's symbolic of the ass of life, and that Rikishi has been someone who suffered the stink of the ass of life for too long in his life, like where you had the stabbing and all the other stuff in the past. Oh, it was a drive-by shooting, actually, wasn't it? It wasn't a stabbing, but essentially he's had a lot of issues in the past that he's had to overcome, and so now he just makes sure everyone smells what he's been through by delivering the ass of life to their faces.
How Paul Heyman is that fucking line?
I know, it's just
What? The man sticks his ass in people's face and shakes it around. There's nothing like that trying way too hard.
yeah, no, you're just trying to like. So the reason why he does it isn't just to get a pop from the crowd or
Not
just
just
to
because he's
be
fat and
jokes
he puts his
people.
ass in people's faces.
Yeah,
No.
it's because he has had a tragic life and he wants people to suffer their own tragedy by sniffing up his
But
arse crack. That's essentially what the whole story is. That just adds a little another layer to the Rikishi character that we didn't need.
yeah.
We move on to the match itself with Brock Lesnar versus Randy Orton. So Orton charges to the ring first to get on the offense. He outspeeds Lesnar on some of the early exchanges, but Lesnar stops Orton's momentum dead with a belly-to-belly throw, and it's pretty much Lesnar in control for the vast majority of this match. At one point, he power slams Orton into one turnbuckle, maintains hold, then charges into the other corner. So he's just displaying his dominance against this kid at this point in time. A gut buster across the shoulder by Lesnar was cool. Orton fights back. He hits his backbreaker spot, so he was still using that move this early on in his career.
I feel like that was like the one thing he came up with on his own, and he's like, "I love it. I'm sticking with this forever."
He tries the crossbody attempt, but Lesnar rolls through with him, hoists him onto his shoulders, nails the F5, and gets the easy victory. So
did he have an easier time beating him here or at SummerSlam in 2016 where he cut him open?
I think that this was a more dominant display than the other match was. I'll put it that way.
That's fair.
Even though I guess it was probably for the best that Orton didn't need to bust himself open hard way in this regard. But yeah, just another good squash match. Let's have a couple of these now. He's been established as, okay, this is the top dog on SmackDown. He's our world champion. And he's beaten people in the mid card that just demonstrate his superiority over them.
Yeah, I mean, Brock Lesnar being pushed, I've said it before, I'll say it again. He had the best WWE run ever from 2002 to 2004.
So Mark Henry walks around backstage. He shakes the hand of Billy and Chuck to congratulate them on their announcement. So, okay, so he's going to be in action soon. But before that, Crash Holly is backstage signing a SmackDown contract with Stephanie. She thanks him for humiliating Bischoff and wishes him good luck in his upcoming match tonight. Devon enters the office.
This is a weird one to me.
Yeah, this is a weird segment. So Devon enters the office saying that what took place between Billy and Chuck tonight was a sin and an abomination because he's obviously very religious and gay marriage is not a great topic. I hear that gay marriage is not the most welcome topic in many religious organizations.
No, you'd be very surprised at how not welcome it is.
So Stephanie reveals that their commitment ceremony will take place on SmackDown next week. Devon says that it should be Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
just like I need to understand. I was a young child at this point, and when I saw how much press this was getting, I didn't get it. Like I didn't get why this was like this groundbreaking thing. I had no clue what was about to happen.
So Stephanie says that it's immoral for someone to impersonate a member of the cloth, basically saying that you're not a real reverend, you're just pretending to be a reverend.
Yeah.
And then he should focus on his match with Batista tonight instead of worrying about what Billy and Chuck are doing. So we'll also see the blow off to that feud tonight as well.
But is it weird that this is like also an odd show of progression by WWE to have Stephanie say things like that? I mean, Devon stuff aside.
I mean, we're not going to talk about what happens next week just yet, but I think that it's WWE thinking they're being progressive when actually not being progressive. I think Stephanie, the way that Stephanie says that stuff is like a progressive attitude towards it. But as we'll find out on the next episode, yeah, it's still not exactly like a whole. I don't think they'll be invited to many gay pride parades at this point in time. At the moment, at the very least.
I think you're right.
It's not quite Sonya Deville being accepted for who she is. That sort of, and just like not letting that touch her character pretty much in any way other than just like, okay, you can come out wearing the flag every now and again and stuff like that because we know how much this means to you.
Well, how on earth do you think Monday Night Raw is going to answer this The
Uh,
active progression.
I don't want to talk about it. It's just there's so much to talk about next week. You definitely don't want to miss next week's one. Hopefully, you're enjoying this
Yeah.
one, but next week's one is an absolutely mustn't miss episode. But we actually have a match now between Mark Henry and Tajiri, which is basically just your standard big behemoth against little guy trying to outspeed and fight this guy. So Tajiri at one point tries a handspring elbow, but is essentially just bulldozed by Henry walking in. Henry doesn't really have too many moves at this point in his career. It's basically just throw my body into people.
Yeah, Mark Henry is the perpetual image of untapped potential before 2011, right?
I would say so. There was a lot of things they should and could have done with him, even though for the most part of his career he was fairly limited in the ring. It's still like he had the size, he had the story, he had the build to really just be a top guy in the company if they booked him correctly.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we move on to this match itself. It's pretty one-sided. You just have Henry take control for the most part. Tajiri at one point gets a few kicks in and gets him down to his knees at one point. But then he just starts doing his moves where Henry blocks the buzzsaw kick. Tajiri can't apply the tarantula around him. And then so Henry just lifts him out of it and pancakes him on the mat. Hits a running power slam and wins.
Yeah, that's right. He's not even doing the world's strongest slam yet, is he?
No, he's just doing running power slam. So he's basically doing the Bobby Lashley, Braun Strowman finisher at the moment.
Right.
So yeah, just another squash match. Not as good as the Brock one, but they're trying to do something with Henry right now without actually doing anything with him.
And much like everything else in the Mark Henry timeline, that would be derailed by an injury.
So we move on to the backstage segment. So this is the big round table segment between Stephanie McMahon, just sitting in the center alongside Brock Lesnar and the Undertaker. So this is just a confrontation, just a small promo segment where both sides get to talk about the stuff. So Brock says he doesn't have much to say, he just lets his actions speak for him. He hypes up his amateur accomplishments, having won King of the Ring, beating Hulk Hogan and The Rock. Says he's 25 years old, and then notes that Undertaker is super old already in 2002. Considering the fact that he still...
They would
his last
fight
match was
13 years
2020.
later at SummerSlam.
Yeah, I know. It's just like amazing that the Undertaker's age is already being brought up in 2002, considering the fact that his most recent wrestling match was in 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So bits and pieces that I didn't like about this. Brock Lesnar, I get that he just wrestled. I sort of preferred had he put at least pants on for signing a contract. Because it's not like a signing in the ring. It just looks like, here's this guy who, is still in his gear. I would have liked that little note. I like that Brock spoke for himself here. We've spoken about this, how Lesnar isn't the mouthpiece. He's just sort of the hype guy. And Brock spoke very well for himself here. I want more contract signings like this. Doesn't need to be in front of people,
Yeah, I completely agree. It was a bit more intimate, and it was different to just the standard in-ring stuff. And you knew that this one wouldn't necessarily end in a brawl, even though it did slightly, but not to the level that you usually anticipate from a contract signing. Taker responds to Lesnar, saying that he's seen the look in Lesnar's eyes more times than he can count. Says that Lesnar is impressive, but he's inexperienced, and he's never been in a quote-unquote fight in the ring, which is what Taker's going to bring him. So Taker's going to test him. He's going to bring a new level of physicality that he's never experienced before. Heyman.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say that Heyman then steps up. He applauds Taker, says Lesnar is fully focused on Taker, but that Taker is distracted by his own family situation. So the story is that Taker's wife Sarah at the time is pregnant with their child.
I hated this.
Yeah, this is terrible. Yeah, this is I immediately thought that why do you need to add this element to this feud?
This was back in a time where they were obsessed with humanizing everyone. And, let's make Kane a guy who had a normal teenage years, I guess, even though he was in a burn unit and he, had that car crash with Katie Vick. Let's, let's talk about Undertaker's wife being pregnant and how he's got a mistress. I hated anytime they tried to humanize the Undertaker. I didn't even like it in 2020, for that matter, let alone in 2002.
Yeah, again, we talked about how some of the real genius of the Rock and Lesnar one was the fact that it was just two guys just wanting to prove that they're the athletic best in the company right now. And I feel like the real story could have just been built around the fact that Lesnar has had a lot of wrestling matches, but he's never had a brawl like Undertaker will bring to him. And that could have been the whole meat of the story. I don't see why you had to add this element of, oh, okay, so your wife's pregnant, and Paul Heyman's making creepy gestures about the fact that he wants to take care of Sarah and the baby once Undertaker can't do any more because Lesnar takes him out. I guess it's the idea of like they wanted to add an element of head games to it, but I feel like it was unnecessary.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen Taker defend the honor of Michelle. He's defended the honor of Sarah in the past, but I just never like it. And I think we've learned, especially with these two, the best story ever told by Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker is a mythical, unbeatable icon, and Brock Lesnar, being the animal he is, snapped the streak. It always works better when we're just focusing on legacy, especially with these two.
All right, so Taker gets annoyed at that. He pushes Heyman and a table over, gets nose to nose with Lesnar, but they don't actually clash at this point. So there's now like this intensity between the two of them that there wasn't before, but it's built around the fact of, okay, Taker's about to be a daddy, and he's upset that they're bringing up the fact that he's about to be a daddy.
Yeah, just not necessary.
We move on to the culmination of a rivalry which has been going on for several months in our journey, which is Reverend Devon versus Batista.
We've talked about this for far too long.
Yeah, I know, this has been like just an ongoing sequence of things, and the match itself doesn't deliver in terms of like, oh, this has been a real heated super storyline, because essentially it's just a squash match. Batista takes 90% of this. Devon grabs a chair, but Batista clocks him. The ref takes the chair from Batista. That allows Devon to hit Batista with a chair when the referee went temporarily deaf and couldn't hear a chair shot being delivered to Batista.
God, that selective hearing is just oof.
But Batista pretty much fights back almost like a minute later. He hits the Batista bomb and pins Devon clean in the ring. And yeah, they've established him pretty immediately. It's like, okay, Batista's this new big deal. Like, he's huge, he's a monster, he's an animal, he's going to be a big deal going forward. And that would prove to be the case.
And yeah, I'm glad we're almost nearing the end of Devon impersonating a man of the cloth.
We also spoke about, how they have like the generic themes of like people like Cena and Orton and Shannon Moore, as we discussed in the past. Batista's theme fucking ruled at this point already. Like, he already had a sick.
And all they did was get a real band to do it, add lyrics, and you're done.
So backstage, Nydia asks Noble if they'll ever get married in response to the Billy and Chuck announcement earlier. Noble says yes, although his eyes basically say hell no. And they kiss and get ready to leave. So Noble's clearly not ready for a commitment just yet.
No, he's non-committal, and Nydia's having a good time. But why we gotta ruin it with talks about wedding bells? He got money like that. He just got clean water for the first time in his life.
So, in a prelude to what we will see going forward with Matt Hardy and Shannon Moore, Matt Hardy is with Shannon Moore watching a video of his match with Lesnar, which conveniently cuts out the 80% of the match, which Lesnar dominated and won the match.
Of course.
It's just the few spots of Matt Hardy beating up Lesnar and getting a few hits in.
Well, you don't get the full dose of attitude if you're watching Matt Hardy get beat up.
Hardy says that he sees potential in Shannon Moore, so he should watch the video and his match with Hardcore Holly later tonight, and that one day he'll have the attribute to face a WWE champion. So Matt Hardy's now seemingly trying to take Shannon Moore under his wing already. Hardcore Holly turns up, says that Hardy left out the footage of Lesnar F-ing his ass in the center of the ring. Hardy says that he's jealous that his star doesn't shine as brightly as Matt Hardy's one does. Hardy says that Holly needs a double dose of Mattitude and will get it in the ring tonight. So building up to that match between those guys.
Hardy should have just walked away and said, "Oh, I got a phone call that's more important than this." That apparently gets Hardcore Holly to just go away.
So then we go backstage again, and it's Angle and Eddie in the locker room. Eddie's admiring Angle's medals, asks how much he could get for them because,
prelude to that.
Yeah, prelude to the lie, cheat, and steal stuff. Angle's obviously not very keen on that idea. Eddie says that he wants revenge against Rikishi tonight after last week. Angle said that he was robbed last week as well. If it wasn't for Benoit, he would have beaten The Undertaker because obviously Benoit was the one that took the last ride and was pinned. Angle calls Eddie Cheech because casual racism in 2002. Says that Benoit was the one that got pinned just as Benoit approaches from behind. Angle says that he's more like the rabid puppy dog because he can't see Benoit at this point in time. They both start laughing at Angle. Benoit asks Angle if he can beat him or make him tap out, and he gets him in his face and tells him to prove it. Eddie tries to call the tension because they are teaming up together in the six-man tag later on. Angle says, and they basically leave, but Benoit and Guerrero leave, and Angle just puts his hands on his hip and says, "What was that about? What was it, something that I said?" Because Angle is so oblivious to the fact that he's an arsehole.
Yeah. Angle is... I hate the fact that he spent the final good years of his career in TNA.
Yeah.
Angle's so good.
So we have Matt Hardy versus Hardcore Holly. So Hardy's clearly turning heel, but he's getting a more positive reaction in this match because basically Hardcore Holly is just a remnant of he's a remnant of a different era at this point.
He doesn't make you want to start your engines or anything? Like,
he might have done in the past, but right now it's he's just a guy. He's just a veteran on the roster that doesn't have anything going for him right now.
Right.
So Matt Hardy's the one with the direction, but in order to have that direction, he needs to lose this match. And so they have a fairly just decent, nothing to really write home about match. Holly blocks a second side effects attempt with a back elbow, does his patented draping kick to the gut, hits a powerbomb for 2. Matt Hardy hits a middle rope leg drop for 2. They both escape each other's finishers. Matt Hardy then tries to grab the tights on a roll-up attempt, but then Holly reverses, grabs the tights himself, and gets the pin himself. So Holly beats Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy continues his downward spiral, his losing streak, and yeah, that's the trajectory he's on at the moment. But it's all for a good cause, as we will find out.
Absolutely.
So Funaki interviews Rico about next week's wedding. Rico says that it will be a spectacle, and he's making it his personal mission that everything goes off perfectly. And he says that he's both standing up for Chuck at the wedding and being Billy's best man. So he is the centerpiece of this entire wedding.
Yeah.
And
as we would see, it's the greatest wedding in WWE history.
We will definitely discuss this stuff going forward. Crash walks into Hardcore Holly in the gorilla position. They both just shake hands, a little reunion between those two. Hardcore wishes him luck for his match, which is right now Crash Holly versus the Hurricane. So I don't know what they were trying to achieve with this match because Crash Holly's just been signed to SmackDown, and the Hurricane takes 90% of this match. He absolutely dominates this match from pretty much start to finish. He hits a swinging neck breaker from the top rope, hits a shining wizard for 2 count, a huge diving crossbody. Like every single thing is pretty much the Hurricane in control until he rolls up the Hurricane for free when he attempts a chokeslam. That was basically one of, if not the only move that he actually got on the Hurricane in this entire match.
I don't understand what they did with Crash Holly tonight.
Oh, I think he's a new good contribution to the cruiserweight division. Obviously, I don't know whether they knew it at the time, but eventually the Hurricane would end up being Raw, moving to Raw. So why would you give Hurricane so much offense in this match?
I guess maybe it's the hindsight that I'm thinking of, but it just seemed weird to me,
Yeah, I understand that. I just feel like if you're going to position him as like, okay, listen, good new star for the cruiserweight division, maybe he could be the next person to challenge Noble, you give him a more decisive win in this match. I know Hurricane raises Crash's hand afterwards as like a show of respect to try and like, okay, this guy is going to be the new big challenger, new big babyface in the cruiserweight division going forward. But yeah, it just felt like he just really just snuck a victory in this one, and they should have been more decisive.
Yeah.
But we move on to the move on from that quickly on to the main event. So Undertaker, Edge, and Rikishi facing Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, and Eddie Guerrero in a 6-man tag, and this is a great 6-man tag match.
Yep.
Very, very fun.
Everything that Edge, Angle, Benoit, and Guerrero touch throughout this journey turns to gold. Undertaker still got the working boots on, and Rikishi might be the hardest working guy of the whole series.
Yep. So everybody in this match looks good for a certain portion of it. It tells a good story throughout. Eddie and Edge are constantly fighting and renewing their rivalry. Edge is the one that takes the lengthy heat segment in this one, as you'd expect, considering it's Rikishi and Undertaker on the apron. He hits an execution on Angle at one point to get some separation. Benoit knocks Rikishi off the apron, but Edge escapes him and then tags in Undertaker. Undertaker runs through everyone, sets up Benoit for a chokeslam, but the referee gets distracted, and that allows Eddie to low blow the Undertaker. And then it's just move after move after move. German suplex to Undertaker, Savate kick to Benoit, ankle lock on Rikishi. Edge spears Angle, gets him out of the way. Cactus clothesline by Eddie to Edge sends them both to the outside. They just move after move after move. It's the whole 6-man breakdown that we all kind of love to see every now and again.
And I think it worked fantastically here, you know. When the pieces are right and everybody knows their role, wrestling is fun.
And this is where the actual match, the story of the match really kicks in, which is Rikishi stink faces Kurt Angle. Benoit then responds by throwing Rikishi into the post, but then he turns around and starts laughing at Kurt, in the face of Kurt Angle, because Kurt Angle just got the stink face. And Benoit's just laughing. They go head to head, and Eddie tries to get in between them, but Angle moves away, and then they start just trading submission holds. They're just beating the shit out of each other until Angle catapults Benoit into the ring post.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
They fall to ringside, and they're both just like either fighting or just hurting each other at ringside. This leaves Eddie alone with all 3 baby faces, and this is why Eddie Guerrero is one of the greatest pro wrestlers of all time.
Yep.
Because he turns around, he counts them all up, he realizes he's in a shitty situation, he walks up to Edge, he walks up to Rikishi, just puts his arm on Rikishi's shoulder and says, "Hey, what those guys? What are they doing? They're crazy, right?" It's so fucking good. Tries to buddy up with all of them. They're not falling for it. Edge spears Eddie, shoves his face right into Rikishi's ass. Taker then holds Eddie up with one arm for several seconds, delivers the choke slam, and gets the victory.
You gotta love it when you got a guy who will just let you hold them up for several seconds with one hand, because not a lot of people will do that.
No, Eddie sold brilliantly for all of these guys. He was the part of the joke, but he still hasn't lost anything because he's been doing this really intense character, and he still has that element to it. But he's also a heel, and he's willing to be the butt of the joke more often than not. This it gave Undertaker a win in his build up for his championship match. It sowed the seeds for what will end up being a feud between Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit going forward. Rikishi's involved in this as well because his stink face is kind of like the catalyst for all this stuff. You've got Eddie and Edge still having a rivalry in the side of it. It's just really, really good stuff.
I do wish they would have given Rikishi like a stronger role, because he's so big on the TV shows, but he doesn't have much going on at the pay-per-views.
No, he doesn't have a lot of direction right now. But he's so over with the crowd, and he's like a prominent enough character that they just slot him in to be involved in other people's feuds. I just don't think they saw a lot in terms of what we're going to do with Rikishi in terms of him being a championship contender or anything along those lines, especially because there's no mid-card title on SmackDown outside the Cruiserweight title, which he clearly isn't eligible for. But so there wasn't really anything else for him to do, because they were never going to make him WWE champion.
Yeah, it's one of those shames. Like, he would have made it for a great, secondary or even like a tertiary champ if they had a European title or something, but just a different direction.
So overall, I'd say this was a pretty bland episode of SmackDown. Like, the main event saves it, and there's some good other stuff, but most of the matches are squash matches or matches that the crowd really aren't into. So we're talking about like last week's one was a wrestling fan show. This one just was a bit, okay, let's turn the wheels a little bit. It wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not one that I'm going to remember once this series is over.
Yeah, I think I'll remember. Obviously, everybody remembers the proposal. Might remember bits and pieces of the 6-man, but overall, the middle of the show was kind of blah.
Yeah, but next week, shit gets really real, because we have, as we've spoken about in many times before in this edition, the Billy and Chuck wedding, and there's so much to unpack with the Billy and Chuck wedding. We have a main event of the Undertaker versus Matt Hardy, and some more progression of the Undertaker and Brock Lesnar feud. We have more progression of the Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit feud, including another great match between Kurt Angle and Rey Mysterio to look forward to. And we have Los Guerreros in actions against Edge and John Cena.
That's a team.
And we also have a pretty infamous match between Brock Lesnar and Hardcore Holly.
Oh, yeah, because Hardcore Holly wanted to get the belt and beat everybody, but
his neck kind of let him down in this one.
No.
But yeah, so I think that this is arguably the most eventful episode of SmackDown we'll have covered up to this point. So make sure if you haven't already, if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, or you haven't hit the bell for notifications, that you definitely do this now, because you definitely don't want to miss next Saturday's episode.
The wedding of the century.
Other than that, just a few other plugs before we bid you guys adieu. So if you want to help us out on the monetary side of things, then there is the Patreon, where you can check out, if you're on the Darkcast tier, which is the $10 tier, check out a few our subsidiary reviews of the 2002 pay-per-views. So the most recent one we did was for SummerSlam 2002. We'll be doing one this month for Unforgiven 2002 as well. So make sure, if you would like to listen to it and get the full Paul Heyman podcast experience, that you're signed up to that tier and check out those extra episodes as well. If you have other ways you can support us financially, is through the Redbubble and TeePublic. Buy up some Smark Out Moment merchandise. And obviously with the Patreon, even if you can't stump up for the $10 tier, even $1 goes a long way to just helping us all out. As we've said previous times before, if everyone who's subscribed to this channel just gave $1, then we would have so much more that we could do for you guys going forward. So think about it. If you do have a spare buck, we know money is tight nowadays. So if you do have the money to spare, then please, then feel free to throw it our way. But if not, then keep it to yourself by, I don't know, buy your mum or your dad something nice with it instead. Just don't feel obliged to do it, is what we say.
Yeah, I mean, anything is helpful, and like, really, I know you might feel bad. Just, all I can give is $1. Tony has said many times, if everybody who's subscribed to the YouTube just gave $1, the site could grow exponentially.
Yeah.
So anything is appreciated.
And even if you can't spend the money, it doesn't cost anything to like the videos, to share the videos around. So even if you do that, that's like really helpful as well. You can obviously follow Smark Out Moment on Facebook and Twitter. Join the Mega Maniacs for the Facebook group. That's where you can share a few memes or talks about some ideas about what the current WWE and any other wrestling promotion that you're following right now. Just share a few bits and pieces in there, and where you can track along with the Fantasy League, which is taking place right now. You can follow, if you want to help out Tony's sister site, the Fanboys Anonymous side of things, our Blue brand, for all the geek culture stuff. Then check out their website, the Patreon, their merchandise on Redbubble and TeePublic. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers most of the plugs. Rob, do you want to throw out your own one?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DeFelice. Check out the other sites I work for, such as Fightful and WrestleZone. Check out the WrestleZone Daily podcast, all the stuff Sean's got going on with Fightful Select. And yeah, just keep supporting and come back next week. It will be fun. I think Callum and I are going to have a lot of fun next week.
Absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. Make sure you're hitting up some of the great articles on the smarkoutmoment.com website. And we will see you next week for a very bumper edition of the show. But for now, this has been another Smark Out Moment, and we are being counted out.